Hey everybody, welcome. Today I want to talk about the proper way to put a saw blade on your saw frame. So the saw frame, you can see I have a little drawing over here with a couple little things to help remind us. Your saw handle or your saw frame will have three different areas that you can loosen and tighten. In those three areas, you want to be careful as you're doing it that you don't lose any of the pieces opening it up. There's really no need to loosen them so much that the bolt itself or the head's going to fall out or any of these plates are going to fall out. You really only need to loosen it just a little bit. On the diagram here you can see it says first, second, and third, and when we're trying to put a blade in, we want to work with these in that order, and we need to work with this one first, and then after we get this locked and set, we'll move to here to adjust the height of the frame. And after we get the height, the desired height, we can lock that one or tighten that one up. And then finally we'll move to the third one to get that blade stretched all the way across and nice and taut in between this area. You probably got a packet of saw blades. There's usually about a dozen of these in each pack or each little grouping. You'll notice that there's a small little kind of wrapper around these. You just want to loosen that up, and sometimes you can actually slide one of these blades out before the whole thing's ungrouped. I would oftentimes remind you to tighten it back up so we don't lose any of those extra blades. When looking at it here, I drew a nicer, bigger diagram. It says blade down and out. And there are definitely very, very small teeth that you're probably going to have to get really close to your eyes in order to see it. And I'm not sure that it's going to be able to focus on here, but you'll be able to feel that with your fingertips as you move one direction of the blade. It kind of picks and hurts, and then with your fingertips as you move the other direction on the blade, it's rather smooth. If you're moving like I am currently down on the blade and it's not picking at your fingers, that's nice. If you're moving up and it's kind of grabbing at your fingers there, that's the direction that we want it. So that's correct. So when I say down and out, the back side of the blade should be the flat, and the front side should have those teeth going out, and then those triangles should be facing downward on the blade as these are. So again, smooth as you pull down with a little bit of a bump, and then really sticky on your finger, kind of grabbing your skin as you move upward. The next thing to talk about is getting that blade into the first section or the first chamber here. That's going to be the most important to get started with. What we want to do is open that up so that there's just a tiny little gap in between these two pieces there. I think you can see a tiny gap. I'm going to make sure our blade is facing the correct direction and get it so that the little blade faces outward and that flat section is facing inward. Get it between those two little plates and then tighten that one up. Make sure that the angle of this blade is not going too far back or too far forward, but really aimed pretty well at the top there so that it'll line up later on. And then you want to give that one a pretty decent tighten. At this point here, you'll see that it's not quite reaching the top, and that's okay, because we're going to move to the second one of these. And what we want to do is slide this, make sure it's unlocked or loose, and slide it so that that blade just reaches the front of this one, because we're actually going to tighten it later on, so much so that that's going to be taut there. What we don't want to do is have that blade reaching in or beyond like that. We want that blade just arriving right at that height, okay, because we're going to stretch that later on. Then we're going to go ahead and tighten this pretty well. You'll notice that my blade's not quite reaching those plates. That's very intentional. What you're going to notice now is that I've kind of shifted the view of this to show the edge of the table, and that's on purpose because we're going to actually need to use the edge of the table and actually part of our body, usually a shoulder, part of your chest or your side, to actually squish and push so that the actual frame of this tightens more, and that's going to get that blade really tight. So you can see it's open like this, it's barely reaching. When I squeeze it that way, it's going to grab, and that's going to make the blade really tight. The way to do that is to turn it so that the handle faces you, your stomach, your chest, your shoulder, and then use the other part of the table, like this, to kind of collapse those two together. This is a little bit awkward to do. You need a decently sturdy table Once you get that into the plate and it's a little squished, you may even notice that your blade looked a little wavy at one point because you were squishing so much. But now, if you've got it locked in, it should feel really tight. And the true test is to take a fingernail, and if you get a nice ping like that, that means that your blade's in there nice and tight, and it's really taut, which means it's going to stretch and cut really well as you're working. Okay? Hey there, I wanted to give another example or demo from the side of how to put the saw blade in. Okay, at this point you will have already done the first and the second. It's really the third one that's a trick or a challenge. So at this point, if I could show you here, this third one would be open, would not be fixed yet. Okay, and what we're trying to do is get that in. We're going to use part of our torso, rib cage, and then the edge of your table. Okay, so you need a nice sturdy table. You're actually it's gonna hurt a little bit. You're gonna have to really push to get that in. So as you push, it's going to move that blade further and further up. Get it between those two plates. When you get a nice push and it's steady between those two plates, that's when you want to give it the tightening effect on the handle. And then, again, it should be in. It should have that nice ping sound just like that.